Good morning, LinkedIn. How are you? I am very excited this morning to be joined by the lovely Zoe.
Good morning. Good morning, LinkedIn.
We have just been chatting about obviously ADHD. So our prep for this conversation has been done in the 2 minutes before we jumped on live.
Yep, true style. Freestyling it with ADHD. Yes.
But we did have a conversation before about what we might speak about. So apologies if we go off of script or not at all what we said we'd talk about, but loosely about wellbeing, AI, and cycles.
Lovely. We love all of those things. We're probably going to knit it together in our discussion, but yeah, it's we did have an inkling what we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And now we're here.
Yeah.
I always hand over to my lovely guests to introduce themselves because I think they do a whole lot better job than I will. So please introduce yourself, Zoe.
Thank you. So I'm Zoe. If you haven't seen this face before, then I'm an ex-CPO, been in HR a long time. Not that I know everything, but just been around the block a few times with the HR. I now run my own business, which is pretty much serving the HR community with AI. All things AI, from advisory to implementation, architect, all sorts of things. So that's where my head and my mind and my heart is these days, helping people because it's so disruptive, it's so relevant, and we're in this kind of like exponential period of change. So yeah, I'm here for that, all for that. And I'm also a PhD student. So I'm marrying the topics of leadership and the future of the workplace and this whole thing called technology in the middle. So my research is around knitting these different pillars together to make some sense of what the future of work looks like.
Nice.
And I'm happy to be here.
It's all very exciting. Zoe and I were on a panel together at the big HR meet, or the
Yes.
HR big meet, whichever way around it is. I always get them mixed up. And it was such an interesting panel. And since then, I've been on your podcast as well, and we always just have the best chats.
It's great, honestly, when you take the time to get to know people. I mean, LinkedIn is a fantastic platform for that. I know that LinkedIn's had a bit of bad press recently, certainly in the conversations that I've been hearing. But if you look at it as an engagement tool and the way to see people, you can stay connected. I know that's not exactly how we met, but lots of people on here. It's a gift. There's not another platform like it, and now we can stay connected and have good relationships and help each other in business, or maybe just even energy exchange, because energy to me is everything. Your currency of energy is what magnates people to you or repels them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do like I hope it works. All the changes that they've made kind of like works in the way that they hope that it's going to, because there isn't another platform like it. I like that we can do lives like this, and
Yes.
it is really good to connect with people. Okay, so I do like to start these conversations with a little bit of a conversation about periods. And I don't know, like, do you remember your first period? Do you have like recollection of that?
Yes. I was 12, actually, 12 years old. And I mean, I was aware of what periods were. I just knew that I was very pleased. I was like, oh, I've achieved this thing. I've arrived at this time of my life. I'm, edging towards an adult. And as you're a kid, well, when I was a kid, I couldn't wait to be an adult. All I wanted to do was grow up. Now I'm grown up. I want to be back to I want to regress. No, I don't want to be back to 12, but as in, no, you're in a hurry to grow up. And it was a symbol for me. And I remember thinking really clearly, I'm growing up. Woohoo!
Yeah. Do you remember like anything about it? Like, did you had by that point, had you have had a conversation like with anything that you needed, like pads, or was it like, what's happening?
No, it wasn't like it wasn't surprising or shocking or frightening in any way, or because I had an elder sister, like there was always things available, as in sanitary products already available. So it wasn't, and I knew fully what was happening. So there wasn't any, I remember, I'm sure my vague memory was that I said to my, I think I said to my mum, I've got my period, kind of thing. Like very proud of it. And my mum was like, oh, okay, great. So let's, make sure that you've got the right things. And so it was a very easy, there was no fuss. It was just an event that happened. I was very proud and pleased. And it was very seamless. There was no, we'd already had discussions about it because I had an elder sister.
Yeah.
It was easy.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I like to ask that question because I don't remember my first one, and I always think that that's a bit of a shame because of the work that I do and being the period princess, and I don't remember my first period, and I'm sure it is in some documented in a journal of mine, but I also have a feeling, because I've never found that, I think I had like a funny 5 minutes of like, I don't need any of these things anymore, I'm just going to throw them all away, and like in a really rash, impulsive ADHD moment, I think, where I cleared out the attic, and I feel like I may have thrown that journal away. It's yet to be, I think it might be in my parents' attic somewhere, but we've never found that box that I've been looking for. But I hope one day I find it and there's a record of how I felt about it. But it's interesting hearing people's different stories, especially from our generation, because they're a bit hit and miss, really, whether they were celebrated or wrapped in shame.
I think it's quite polarizing. I think that I don't know if I'm the norm or not, but I do believe that some people have been sort of, really ashamed and traumatized by the whole sort of periods, maybe because they didn't have any education or they weren't prepped. There's this, I don't know if you've ever seen it, or for anyone listening or being with us in this moment or on the replay, have you ever seen a film called The Thornbirds? Richard Chamberlain plays a priest. It's got 3 books. It was a very heart-rending love story. And it's where a young girl falls in love with a priest, and her name's Meggie. I mean, I remember this, so I haven't watched it for years and years, but I remember it because it really stuck with me. And Meggie was young and got a period and didn't know what was happening to her, and she was distressed because she thought she was dying. And so it was this whole event. But of course, becoming a woman, or towards becoming a woman, was not something, she didn't have any education. So it was a shock and frightening. And I wonder how many other people have that experience, because I think that's really sad. Because, to become a woman, we have to remember that only women can reproduce, as in carry a baby. And that is that signifying that journey, that opportunity is now starting. I mean, you wouldn't want a baby at 12, don't get me wrong, but it just symbolizes that the female body biology is so phenomenal. And what we do, we're a whole ecosystem that's working brilliantly. And if you get periods and you get, great periods, your body's working really optimal. I mean, lots of people have problems with periods. I have horrendous ones, but I'm sure there's people that are much worse than I am. So, and I'm at menopause. So, hey, it's all changed again. Puberty all over again, the reverse.
Yeah, exactly that. Second adolescence. Yeah, it's so true. And actually, when I talk about, I like the sort of ecosystem, I call it our inner ecosystem. And when I talk about hormone balancing and all of those things, what I'm really talking about is optimal ovulatory cycles, really, because it's only through the process of ovulation that we have periods, because that process of ovulation means that we're then producing progesterone. We only produce progesterone because we ovulate. And so it's that hormone balancing piece is all about creating optimum ovulation in the end. And I think that's, periods get all the limelight, but ovulation doesn't, unless you're sort of tracking it for fertility reasons, it doesn't get in the way. But that's what it is. It's nervous system regulation, looking after our well-being and creating that harmony in our inner ecosystem, that really helps with balancing our cycles.
It's a really technical process, and one that we probably underestimate and don't really understand it so well. And this is where education can really step up and lean in. Education to me nowadays should be around the facts of life. You've got your body that is going to change over time. And need to think about what those why is your body changing? What does it signify? What does it enable? What does it close down? And that could be said for also, you know, money, running a household, getting a job. Like, there's so many things that are so practical. I don't know that I ever learned about periods at school. It wasn't something, or ovulation, having babies, anything like that. I just knew very young I never wanted to have children. I knew. And if I could have £1 for every time someone said to me, "Oh, you'll change your mind. You'll absolutely change your mind," well, I'd be a millionaire. I swear to God, because from the age of 13, I already knew. So ovulation, periods weren't so significant to me, and I was a diabetic very young. So you know, there's a lot of things that do center around the periods and ovulation, because it is in the main endocrine system, which is obviously a controller of all emotions. And this is when we think, to digress off for a second, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And I know that we've got people that identify differently, but talking about that book, it's so polarizing that men and women biologically are super different. And this would be one of the main reasons.
Yeah, I also don't have children, and it's never been. This is probably a conversation for another day. Part my choice and part what I've recognized now. I think subconsciously, part of my neurodivergent brain knew that I don't know if I have the executive functioning skills to be a mum, which is a bittersweet sadness. Like, I want them, but I haven't never wanted them. I don't have them. And so it's a really loaded one, like, especially as I've grown up the same, like, oh, you'll change your mind. Oh, you'll have babies one day. And it's always like, it's not a choice, but it is a choice. It's kind of a funny one. But one of the I read once something that really resonated with me, because obviously when we ovulate, we release an egg from the follicle in our ovaries. But if that's not fertilized, that egg then is reabsorbed into our bodies. And the perspective was that every ovulatory cycle that the pregnancy does occur, you seed your own creativity, like a creatrix. You kind of seed your own projects and passions. You know, my business at times has been my baby, and sometimes it has been my cat. but I really love that idea that is a very potent process, and that you take that creative energy back into yourself to feed your own projects and things. Yeah. You reseed yourself.
Well, we have to, I guess, right? That's a part of rebirth. So death and birth, we see it as traditional, linear, sort of a birth as quite literal 3D, and a death as a literal 3D. But actually it's not. We're reinventing. So new moons typically bring cycle. Everything's in a cycle, everything.
Yeah.
And that cycle is reciprocal, and it's forever working. And so therefore rebirth could be relabeled as fresh, new, recycled, whatever it might be. And there's an ending, there's a closure. And that's the same in a book. You have chapters, there's a beginning, a middle, and end, you know, and then the whole book is a beginning, middle, and end. So it's almost like we live in reciprocal cycles, essentially. And we live in cycles. And we're going to talk about stuff that is cycles, I'm sure.
But it's true. And because of this, and this isn't like, and in our panel, we very much had that concept of the woo and the do. It's I really love that expression. I love the woo, but I love the do. And I think we've both found our careers that have landed, you know, in between those things, acknowledging well-being, because of its impacts on our motivation and thus productivity. Anyone who listens will know I hate the word productivity. Productivity is just the end result of being properly motivated. And if you're a neurodivergent person, that looks very specific. But recognizing that we live in these cycles, the ones that mirror the natural world so very definitely, it needs to feed through into other areas of our lives, work being one of those. And I think, this is what, my work is involved in sort of like bringing awareness of our cyclical selves and our cyclical energy. All human beings, men as well, have a cyclical energy, and working with that rather than against that. But I know that you also take that well-being piece and thread it through into your work. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so do you know, as before I come on to with you, and I never expressed my thanks for being here, because I do thank you for that. So roundabout way, thank you for letting me come on and chat with you. One of the things that I had screaming in my mind was, and I probably might put this as a LinkedIn post later, when people say treat people as you want to be treated, I think is a load of bollocks. Excuse my language. If you don't like that, I do swear. Sorry, not sorry. It's a load of rubbish. Treat people the way they want to be treated, right?
Mhm.
So I'm not you, you're not me. So why would you treat people the way you want? I mean, it's just stupid. And that might bring some triggering moments. That might bring somebody to say the opposite. That's fine. I believe that you treat people as they want to be treated. So when we talk about well-being, I'm curious to know what well-being means to different people, because the word well-being can be, if I asked 100 people, I'm sure I'm going to get 100 different answers. So when I think about well-being, I think about, what does that mean for you, number one? So how it bleeds into my work is I am dealing a lot with technology and AI on a daily basis, hour by hour, moment by moment, actually. And the reason why, no one really asked me the reason why I do and I am in AI. So I'm going to tell you here. The reason why is all around well-being, because I believe the human is superior and the most super intelligent species that we have. I believe that there is nothing more superior than the human being. Okay, so from that perspective, AI can come along and rob us of many things.
Mhm.
It can take away our critical thinking. It can make us lazy. It can do many things. It can amplify the human in so many brilliant ways, mind you. But there's a dark side of everything. So there's duality in everything. There's a light and a day, a dark and a night. You know, social media has a dark side, a light side, and it's going to be no different with AI if it's used properly and with care and the thought of well-being in it. We can make great strides. So my interest in doing AI is to actually dent the world, to make it more accessible and amplify the human rather than dampen and suppress the human.
Mhm.
I'm all about the human spirit. That's where my education is. That's where my heart is and my soul is. I believe that we're these spiritual beings having a human experience. So how do I, in my small way, however I dent the world, bring AI in a sustainable, beautiful way that helps the human, that preserves the human? And that's why I choose to work in tech, amongst any other things. So well-being starts at an individual level, a team level, a business level, and they may all be at very different levels of what well-being looks like for them. So I think we have to discern and understand what's right for us first. We have to be explicit and be able to understand, what does well-being look like for me, for you, so we can take that into consideration of what that translates to in behavior, in decisions and choices. That's a bit of a long-winded way to say that well-being is very unique and individual, and it's very fractious and it's very delicate, and it can be brilliant in 1 minute and it can not be in the next. So we have to really own our own well-being experience.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And the AI, I mean, there's been so many different conversations, so many different perspectives on it. I mean, as a neurodivergent person, like I find it particularly helpful, especially with, as dyslexia is one of my neurodivergencies. I use it for proof checking things all the time, for helping me with grammar, and I've heard lots of different perspectives about like how we use it, but how it can also take away from us as well. And I think personally I've kind of got that balance at a good place, I would say, where it can help me do the dross, so that it allows my brain to do all the exciting
Yeah.
things, the creativity and everything else. But I think it's so tempting to let it just kind of creep in and blur the lines. Where do you feel that line is?
So I've got a question for you first, which is, has AI helped or hindered your life or career or business?
It's definitely helped. Like, I can do much more in a week because of it takes away like some humdrum things that I would otherwise have to spend time doing. So definitely helped.
So the well-being for you is it makes your life easier, maybe happier or more fulfilling. So well-being to me is that AI has actually been a well-being tool for you. So I'll translate that into it's made your life a little bit easier. So the question around, sorry, now repeat the question. So I had that in my mind, like, how does it help you?
No, right. I said, like, where do you sort of think that
Oh, yeah.
line is between it being a help and a hindrance?
So I think that, and this is going to be very individual and personal. So like yours is personal, you know what's right for you. I think the word discernment, the word discernment is to judge well, judge wisely. And I think you have to put that in place. My suspicion is many people think it's fraudulent to use AI. I've got AI shame. I shouldn't use it. I think the blindness around using AI is what people have the reaction to. I don't think it's about them using AI. So let's take LinkedIn feed as an example. I see many things saying, I'm so annoyed with seeing so many LinkedIn posts that are AI generated. So let's take that example. I think that when we just copy and paste, so first of all, there's intelligence has to learn over time. The human has to learn intelligence over time, and AI is no different because the human is the feeder in the experience. It doesn't think without being fueled and fed, right? So we have to do that. The human gets intelligent over a period of time. Now, you can argue what that intelligence is because we've all got a different level of intelligence. But if you kind of look at that on balance, that the AI has to learn, and we have to give it some guardrails and boundaries to learn. So it has to know some things about us to be able to mirror and match that. So once we've got that in place, assuming that we do, because that is a foundational aspect that is required for it to be personalized, for it to have a tone that simulates yours. And it's not about taking over from you. I've got no issue people knowing that I use AI. It's my job. And I'm a student and I use AI for that ethically, responsibly, and it does power me. But what it must not do is take away my creativity.
Yeah.
So how do I get creative? I'm outside. I'm in nature. Nature is intrinsic to our well-being. So we need to be outside and we need to be away from blue light. We need to put our tools down. They are tools at the end of the day, like a device, it's a tool, a laptop, a tool. But we can get very creative being around people that inspire us in nature, changing our energy. So Tony Robbins talks about, your physiology, movement itself brings about some different changes in energy, and energy is really what we are. So if I think about the blurred line, is it healthy to sit in a room locked away, just being on your devices, for 20 hours a day? No. But would it be good to be in the gym for 20 hours a day, exercising your body? Equally, no. Would it be good to be drinking water only for 20 hours each day? Some might argue and say it is. I think that there's all about balance, and we need a balanced life. We need the balance between emotional, physical, spiritual, mental, social capacity to mature ourselves. So when we talk about being like one with ourselves, we've matured all the different parts of ourselves that AI has a place for, but it doesn't replace all of that. So I think you have to discern what's right and true for you. And I am seeing now a lot of feeder people saying, I've got lots of money and I've got good news, but I don't have anyone to share it with. So relationships must not suffer at the cost of AI. And even though you can have an AI relationship, and they are, they've been, I think in places like Korea, AI girlfriends and boyfriends have been around for many, many years.
Yeah.
So I think that we have to pull it into some kind of perspective and say, what's really important here is human connection, being with people that you feel in a great space with. AI is not going to take that over. So the blurred line for me is about discerning where you sit with that. And your body is a GPS system, right? Your body keeps a score. Energy keeps a score. So what's right and wrong because you feel it. I shouldn't be sat here for 20 hours a day just working. We feel it. We ignore it, but we feel it. So we feel it. If we just tap into our bodies, we know the answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's so true. That it's the creativity part. I think when we outsource our creativity, I think that crosses a line. Personally, for me, I feel that would cross a line for me. If we again take the sort of LinkedIn posts, it's always my ideas, it's always my words. They're just maybe cleaned up a little bit with correct grammar and punctuation. But I tend to, I had a good conversation with Vicky Fraser from Moxie Books as well about about posts. She's a writer, and she made a really good point in that when we use AI to put the certainty into things. So part of the beauty of like posting something is the uncertainty. Like you put the creativity in, and you haven't sterilized it within an inch of its life, and you put something out and you might feel nervous about it, or there's that trusting in your own creativity. I thought that was a really good point. And actually, as she said, she'd prefer to recycle an old post and give it a new spin if she was completely out of ideas, than to completely outsource her creativity to AI. And I thought that's a really good point. And so I've really made a conscious effort to like go back, because anyone that's been posting long enough, I hope anyone who posts on social media has something somewhere, a notes, a Google Docs, Trello, Asana, whatever you might use, where you keep your old posts. So I go back to posts like from 5 years ago and think like, oh, that's interesting. How does that land with me now? Like, what new spin can I put on it? Still my ideas, are still my thought processes. They're just maybe tweaked a little bit.
Yeah. And if we did an experiment, which is, let's say that we're all in a room together, and I have done this with in training with a group of people, which is, I want you all to put this question into ChatGPT and then tell me your answers and put them on a word cloud. Not one the same. Not one the same, because this is the beauty. When we train enough and well, we start to have personality. So I call mine. So my AI is called Zed. I've got many bots and agents because I have a world that does that, right? So I'm very blessed that I've got access to it on tap, which is awesome. And I take that very much for granted sometimes. Sorry, Ammon, if you're listening to this, I do. I don't mean to take it for granted, but I do sometimes. Sorry. And I think to myself, I'm not cheating here. This is my thought process. And actually, AI works best if you can break down something. So your outcome might be, and I always think you need to really be intentional with how you use AI. What is it that you shouldn't use AI for everything? No. But what we can do, we need to, I find it best, my thought process is sticky notes. If I want an outcome to be here, I have to reverse engineer it backwards and kind of ask a stage of questions. And I draw from different places, consolidate it together, and then ask the killer question that I need to. Like, taking all this in consideration, all of these steps, what might be 3 options that I can consider XYZ, just inventing, right? And that, to me, no one else can replicate that, because that's my brain putting that into a sequence. That's my brain saying, at this point, I need to know this bit so I can get to that next part. That's like breaking down a project. So what would take me 3 months of thinking, and naturally the next step would be, okay, what's the question here? It's just that that's a much speedier process. And that's what really AI gives us. It gives us time. And in my company, that's what we sell. We'll sell time and freedom. We're not really selling AI. That's just a vehicle for us to get more time and freedom. So yeah, it's kind of like the creativity for me, and bearing in mind that I'm studying, so I'm not reading a lot of fiction, non-fiction, or stories that, maybe I would like to. Right now, I need to be laser focused. And in fact, my first module is all about AI and ethical considerations at university. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. Anyway, so I'm very heavy into the text around that. And so I'm very conscious that my brain is very in that world. So I have to draw myself out and make it also a conscious choice that I'm outside going for a walk, that I am socializing with friends, and I am not just all consumed by mental processing, because that also can kill down creativity for me. My creativity comes when I'm driving. It usually comes when I'm moving forward at some kind of speed. So walking, cycling, driving, flying, all of these things have a symbol for me. My creativity is very tied to movement. So to move for me is, to not move is dangerous. And I think we've all got a part, if we really sat back and said, well, what is it that makes me creative? Where do I feel most creative? Where is my energy? It's not really an AI conversation. It's more around, where do I feel inspired the most and motivated and, you know, innovative, and follow that. That's what I.
Yeah, and I do like this piece of you know, the fact that we are the experts as the business owners, or the, you know, the whatever position you are in, you're the expert, and so the quality of your questions determines the answer. You can't, if you're not an expert in something, you're not going to get as high a quality answer, and that's all it is. And that's where our creativity piece, I think, really comes in. That's how we don't lose ourselves, is to keep that creativity and keep tapping into the places we're inspired, right? To so that we're so we can ask the right question, we can put the right spin on it.
Totally. And I think if I think back to a time that I felt very inspired, anything is possible. When I feel highly inspired and creative, I feel insatiable, like nothing is impossible. That feeling of like certainty that you can do anything, and that is what I live for, right? That's what the feeling of that is. What, if I'm going to chase anything, I'm chasing that. And it is that insatiable sense of, oh my God, I can do anything. And I always think of Rocky Balboa in the movie. What is the movie? Dun, 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 dun. Eye the Tiger is the theme, and it's Sylvester Stallone. It is Rocky. It's called Rocky. Yeah, I think it's that.
Like, it's
is it Rocky? I think it's Rocky. Anyway, Slice Stallone. Gosh, I couldn't get that out. Yeah, I think of like being at the top of those sort of stairs and thinking, you know, yes. That to me is creativity, and whatever drives you to feel that, is that what we should be tapping into. And that's not an AI conversation. It's AI can create a lot of brilliantness, and a lot of dross, as you call it, could be taken away from us so that we can truly live. Because most of us are sleepwalking. We're sleepwalking because we're on autopilot. So we can be off of autopilot, and we can make choices and decisions that are helpful for us. But we just, you know, sometimes need to be reminded of that.
Yeah, I like to think about, so there's, I have like a little whatever, a little founding thing that I always try to do in my business with business decisions, and that is follow the joy. Anytime there's been a little spark of joy in something that I've been chasing, if I follow that, it always leads to something good. It always leads to expansion or to a favorable outcome. It's the times where I don't follow the joy. And I think if we can do that and follow the joy, just the little breadcrumbs of joy, it might not be a full body experience, but it might just be a little breadcrumb. Like, oh, that feels really exciting. I want to see where that goes. And the more you follow that, I think the more that leads to places of inspiration.
Absolutely. It reminds me of a guy called Tony Lee. Tony, if you're listening to this, I think your work is really remarkable. So as a student on my master's, which I finished in 2023, I think it was, or 24, Tony Lee was one of my fellow students, and his last dissertation was called Follow Your Bliss. And he talks about exactly this. He brought a lot of scientific fact to it. Follow your bliss. And it's courageous and brave to follow your bliss, by the way. Follow that joy, that seed, that thought. If something excites you, follow that feeling. And I think you are, and science would say this, it's not woo-woo. what we call woo-woo, there is science behind it. And for anybody that thinks it is a bit woo-woo, I urge you to think about, in your corporate workspace, have you ever heard of Abraham Maslow? Yes, you have. Hierarchy of needs? Yes, you have. And here's the thing. He's the one that created the concept of transcendence, self-actualization. He's the one that, as a humanistic psychologist, brought to market this what we call transpersonal psychology, which is heavily steeped in following that energy. We're in one field, and I know that some people might not resonate with that, and if you're curious, then you can find it, but you have to be curious. It's that little seed of joy that you just mentioned. Oh, that interests me, I'm going to follow that and go down that rabbit hole. Go there, because that will just follow to little more seeds of joy. And isn't that why we're here, to experience joy and not dross? Yes, that's the sleepwalking versus living, and it's not all about money.
No, it's not. But it's not all about money. But often I found, if I follow my spark of joy, it kind of needs the same thing. So
it's a byproduct, though, right? It's a byproduct of you following that joy. That's not your intention. It's to follow that joy. But actually, the byproduct of that, or the outcome of that, or the subsidiary of that, is then capitalizing on monetizing it and not being money led first. Money doesn't necessarily lead to joy. Joy usually leads to some kind of reward.
Yes, and that doesn't necessarily mean money, but it doesn't necessarily mean not, or a roundabout way. And actually, this actually kind of mirrors that productivity thing, because being properly motivated has to do with following, especially if you're an ADHDer. Our brains are interest-led. So there's my favorite acronym for it is NICE: novelty, intrigue, challenge, and emergency. And when we can hit upon one of those things to drive us, that's a effective motivation. And those things will spark little joys, like, oh, that sounds exciting. Oh, this sounds interesting. Like, I want to go to this place. It then leads to that productivity. But I think then, if we're sort of bringing that into the workplace, like into work, I mean, that would be a really brave thing to say. Well, let's not focus on the money or the profit margin. Let's focus on the joy. Like, how do we bring that in?
Well, if you look at Salesforce, actually, Salesforce has probably got more than 100,000 employees. It's probably number one technologies used broadly across the world. And how did that start? The founder, his name escapes me at the moment. It will come back to me in a second. He has a very spiritual aspect. His business was built on the grounds of, and Salesforce has been built on, following that joy, following that kind of like almost joy. And what comes as a result of that is something that is so profound. And how he keeps that alive is every time he opens a new division, like a building, for example, there's a ritual. And somebody can correct me if you work for Salesforce, but as I understand it, there's almost like a ritual performed. They've got a meditation floor, a wellbeing floor, not just an area, a floor where there is all sorts of things happening that create these moments of joy. That's exactly what. So if you can sit quietly and enjoy 5 minutes of just breathing beautifully, and feeling fresh because of that. The breath is such a tonic to us, and it's so available and free. They evoke into people some really simplistic things by what they do. And that is an example of a company that is very commercial. It earns a lot of money, but it's also been built on pillars of what I would say spiritual inclinement. So, and some people might have a reaction to that word spiritual. Let's say holistic. Let's say something that's a bit more it's built on belief systems, faith-based systems. And so I think that that's really a good indicator that you can have business and you can have, and it takes bravery and courage to do that. I don't think money might have been a part of the goal, but I don't think they predicted it to be as profound as it has been. So I work on that principle. It's not about money. We're about supporting and helping people. And through that, that practice, if you like, because I do call it a practice, then people will benefit from that and feel better because of that. And that is therefore directly linked into well-being. The money will come as a result of that. The better you feel about yourself, your life, everything, the better you feel, the more you magnate a type of energy, and that energy will, because we transmute and transmit energy, will be reciprocal. So if you're a negative person, you put negative stuff out to the world and you talk about getting your life being negative, it's because that's what you're attracting. Yeah, if you choose to be optimistic and sit in the energy of that, and I'm not talking about positive toxicity, I'm talking about being able to be grateful. The attitude of gratitude is life-changing if you can adopt that. But being absolutely grateful that everything that you have, and not for what you might have, but what you truly have. And looking at the simple things, it might be a simple, very small something that you have in your life that creates that seed of joy, that spark of joy. To me, that's well-being, because you feel good. And when you feel good, everything becomes much easier to handle, even the challenges in life. And let's face it, there's always going to be challenges in life.
Yeah, and to your point about it not being toxic positivity, I think over time, like, that message has been like quite diluted, and so if for anyone with any like mental health challenges or neurodivergence or dealing with chronic conditions, autoimmune diseases, there are times like where I know I've had large periods of time where I felt really low. And I remember right at the beginning of this sort of money mindset, that kind of like conversation, I was on a course, and I was trying to explain that I'd had a really low phase. It was like pre my diagnosis, so I wasn't really sure what was going on. I think I was just in some kind of burnout situation. And she said, well, nothing comes to desperate Samantha. And she made me feel like all the lack that I had created it because I didn't feel well. And I think that piece can be like quite weaponized against people at sometimes. And I think that's important to recognize that it isn't that toxic positivity. It's just I've tried to, you got to be allowing for yourself to have those like low energy phases, but to know that you can come back to that place where you do feel more motivated, where you can come back to that place of creativity, because you have practices and tools in your life that will help you come back to that place. But does that make sense?
Totally. And what that's making me think is that is exactly what it means to be human, that we have an array of emotions that we can feel and experience. And that is all a part of the joy of when you feel very low. And I'm not going to label it any more than a feeling low. And what does that mean? It's very individual per person. But then how do you know what high feels in parallel to that? How do we know what good feels like? How do we know what love feels like? How do we, all of these labels, it's so subjective and individual. And we have to have varied experiences. We talk about, we need certainty as a human. We also need variety, because we'll never grow and evolve. And we know this, that growth only happens when we're in our discomfort, or typically growth accelerates when we're outside our zone of comfort. So that is what it means to be human, to experience, to feel, to think, to love, to experience all an array of emotions, love being the most powerful one. And love can bring all sorts of different emotions with it. And love for joy, love for work, love for your life, love for another, love comes from all different places. But I think that that's what it means to be human. As you were talking about, I'm like, that's exactly why we should have an arrangement of different experiences so that we feel deeply. Yes, if people are feeling low, how do you get yourself out of that is another question, and one that perhaps is not for today or for now. It's we need duality and we need polarity to understand that from that, this from this, black from white, day to night. We need to know what that is.
Yeah. I mean, I can't answer that question for everyone, but I know for me, in my lowest points, the one thing that's helped me kind of pull out is curiosity. It's that, well, what happens next? You know, like, well, where do we go from here? Like, where do I go from there? Like, what? And it's just that one little like thread of like curiosity that like can pull you back. At least for me, that's what I've always found. And I think actually, on a larger scale, curiosity can be like a form of how we show love when we stop to your point in the beginning about oh, what was it you said? How did you say it? Treat everyone as you want to be treated. No, you need to treat people as they want to be treated. And we only get to that level of understanding with curiosity and, you know, and asking the question. And I think that's, I don't know what your point of view is, but I think that's a really important part of leadership. If you do nothing else, just to be curious.
Absolutely. Totally. I'm with you. And if anyone's ever done the quiz by Gary Chapman, which is the 5 love languages, which you can go online. So just Google Gary Chapman love language and you can do a quiz. Now, no quiz or assessment is 100% right. Okay. So there is, when we are filling out or responding to questions, we have to remember that we've got things going on in our minds and our worlds at that moment in time, which may skew how we truly feel, right? But going on that everything's in a normal state, let's say, doing an assessment can help you to identify what your love language is. Now, most of us, the 5 love languages are acts of service, gifts, monetary gifts, time, affection, and words. Okay, so there's these different and we will have a sequence of what's meaning to us. And so when we can understand another and what their primary love language is, we can tap into that. And again, when somebody feels well and good and motivated, heard and seen, they're much likely to have a better well-being state. I mean, we don't need to pamper ourselves with, manicures and massages, and lots of people might see that as well-being and wellness, and it might well be for you, and that's great. But I'm talking about that inner kind of happiness and joy that we should be experiencing or hopefully experience. And we can choose to do that by looking at ourselves, understanding our love language and being curious to know what other people's are, so that we can adapt how do you want to be treated? What's your love like? How do you receive things? And that only comes from curiosity. I always call it be the detective. Think like a detective. Yeah. Don't have a predefined outcome. Be curious and ask questions. And those that matter don't mind, and those that mind don't matter. So I'm like, if they're annoyed by your curiosity, let them. Mel Robbins, let them do what they're going to do. You keep doing that. You keep being curious, because that's also what grows us and evolves us and helps us to make sense of the world and what's happening in it. So, and I think that as an adult, we believe that we should know more. I disagree with that. I think it's all a learning journey. Everything's a learning journey. So, yeah.
Oh my goodness, this has been amazing. I'm looking at the time and I'm like,
what is the time? Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love it.
We massively overshot, but this has been so good. I knew we were going to side quest hard, and we did.
That's okay though. I mean, I'm curious what the comments might be and what people, the curiosity thing. How are people that are hearing this receiving this? What's your curiosity? What's it raised in you? Because I can tell you now that anybody that's listened to this, you will not had a reaction. You will have somewhere in your body, there'll be tingles, there'll be chills, or there'll be something in your stomach that will be moving. You have got a sensation happening in your body in response to this conversation. And I invite anybody to be curious about that.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Zoe. Is there anything that you didn't get to say? Do you want anyone to know what you're doing? Where can people find you?
Well, that is a great question. Thanks for the invitation. So I am available on LinkedIn. And yes, you do get me. There is no one doing my messages, so you can always reach out to me. I try to be very active every day. I try to help people, and lots of people want to sort of, you know, get some time in my diary. Next 2 weeks is impossible, but if anyone feels really compelled to have a conversation about how you might want to think about AI in your business or your team, and you want to talk about that, then my diary is always open. Equally so, if anybody is interested in research about leadership, technology, and Gen Z and Alpha, I'm also curious to speak to you, because that's where my detective is right now.
Oh, interesting. Oh, I feel like we're going to have to do another.
Well, I'd love to,
I might have to
whenever.
come back to you,
Whenever.
and then
I'd love it. And we'll do another podcast. I think we'll do another podcast as well, another
Yeah.
Z Talk. But it's been great. Thank you. And I hope that this was really resonant for a lot of people, or maybe not a lot of people, but maybe a few select people that needed to hear some of this.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. And thank you everyone who listened live or catches up. We'd love to hear your thoughts. But until then, I will see you next time.
Bye for now. Thanks so much.